Hello, advanced production for writers. Yes, we're getting almost ready to finish this string orchestra project. We're so close, so close. And let me tell you something about our recording session. And this is coming from my heart. When I was behind the control room, I was reading your score. I was, taking notes, but I was actually crying internally of pride and joy and happiness. For me, teaching is like parenting. Exactly the same thing. I felt the same pride and tears when I saw you doing your thing. And when I saw you conducting your music, I felt like, yes, I'm witnessing history. So thank you for allowing me to witness your evolution, your growth, and for trusting me. And because you asked for this, I am creating this video just for you, honestly, just for you. So let's bring this project to the finish line. So I'm going to talk about today about the pre-mixing and editing stage. This is the most important stage in the post-production process. You're never going to be able to mix or master absolutely anything correctly if you don't have this right. This is the foundation. This is everything that you need to take care of. Like, honestly, this is where you have to focus your attention. And I hope in the future you take proper attention in this stage. We're going to be doing a hybrid production. As you know, we're going to be mixing your mock-up, individual tracks from your Logic session, and also our live performance. And ideally, what we want to achieve here is to have the sound of a string orchestra. Okay, I know we just did it through MIDI and we just recorded 4 musicians, but at the same time, that's the beauty of this. That's the challenge. We want to make all this sound like a full orchestra. Okay, so we're getting ready. So please take note, pay attention, and let's start. Perfect. So I'm sharing my screen right now, and let me tell you something. I am featuring the music of an unbelievable student, fantastic writer, and honestly, a fantastic composer. Her name is CG Liang. CG Liang, a fantastic talent, and I'm featuring her music. She wrote this tango. I know she wrote it in 2/2 over here, but actually, this is like the old version of her score. So actually, she did it in 4/4. We're going to be listening to her music. So this is how it looks. Welcome to Pro Tools. Okay, so maybe your session is going to look like this. Once you open your session, you're going to see this wall of tracks, and you're like, and you're going to ask yourself, what is this? Okay, so I want to explain you exactly what is going on and how to organize all these and how to prepare for mixing. Okay, so we're doing the pre-mixing and editing work before a mix happens. Okay, for this particular composition, let me go into my score. Our composer, CG Liang, she actually, as you can see here, she has a lot of DVC. She has a lot of DVC sections. And as I mentioned in class, it's not the right practice to record double stops when you are doing something like this. So what we did is that we recorded single, like different lines, so different layers, okay? So you will see in Pro Tools some of that going on. So let me just quickly explain you how we mic all this stuff. So we have a room mic, like a stereo room mic that are kind of far behind the conductor. And then we have a conductor stereo mic over here, and you can call it, it's called Bloom because it was a Bloom line. That's when 2 capsules are together. It looks like an X, but it's not similar to the X and Y. See, a little bit similar. But actually the difference from Bloom line is that 2 capsules are close to each other in this position, okay? So we had that in front of the conductor, in front of you. And then we have our violin. A violin was recorded with, and let me do this in medium, was recorded with a Sheps. It's a condenser microphone, the small diaphragm, a fantastic microphone. And we also recorded with a Royer 121. And also we have the violin 2. And something to keep in mind, let me tell you, we have violin 2 over here. But I noticed that our engineer labeled things not properly. So instead of violin 2, it was called violin viola 2 or something. So it was strange. So this is normal practice. Like it's a good thing to do to actually double check how the engineers are labeling our tracks, because it's too important, okay? Sometimes we can get confused. So, okay, so I changed this, and now I change it to violin 2. So we have violin 2, the same with Shops, the small diaphragm condenser microphone, and then we have a ribbon microphone here, color-coded in brown, and then we have in this blue, we have the viola 1 and 2, the same thing, and we have cello 1 and 2, the same 2 microphones per instrument, and then we have our conductor track. So this one actually was our talkback. This is the microphone we used to talk with you, but we used also the Sheps, and it sounded amazing. Honestly, it blended well in the studio. So we print it. If you don't have it there, it's because maybe you were doing a lot of noise while changing scores, pages, whatever, and we decided to don't record it. So for some of you, you have it. Some of you don't have it. So in this case, CG Lang, we have her conductor track. And then I also, as you can see, Verve, I printed the reverb, the Bricasti M7 reverb from the studio. So I printed over here as well. And also we have our mix. So this was a mix that the engineer did in the right in the fly, right in the spot. There's like a reference mix that we did over here, over there. You will see also in the top, you will see your click track because you created this, and you will see your reference track as well. Okay, but then as you can see over here, after the mix, we have again the same colors and the same kind of a grouping. We have the room, bloom line, violin. So what is happening here? So as I mentioned before, these are the DVCs. So basically this is the second layer of things. I know it's very confusing. How do we organize this stuff? It's kind of honestly very confusing. So that's why I'm here. I want to help you fix all this stuff. Okay, so let's go directly first let's import our MIDI tracks from Logic. I already did that in advance, so I'm going just to bring them here in the room. Okay, we have them over here. Okay, so let me show you. We have our MIDI tracks over here. Do you see? I call them MIDI violin 1, MIDI violin 2, and all that kind of stuff. I did it for CG. Let's follow our MIDI tracks and let's hear it. Perfect. Something else I wanted to mention is that if you don't hear any noise, any sound, and you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on? It's because remember, we were having the IO was routed to the studio IO. So you have to, the first thing you have to do actually is to go to setup. You have to go to IO and you have to go to outputs. Okay. You can select all of them. Select all of them. Delete path just for safety. Okay, delete all of them and then click default. So this is going to go default to yours. In mine, I'm calling my first one main out, so I don't get confused. And then the inputs, you can do the same thing. And the buses. So what is happening is that you're also going to have the buses from, let's say, from the studio. So it's so important that you basically do the same thing, delete them and click just default. And if you want to add more buses, you can click new path and you can click, I don't know, 10. You can do 10 new buses, stereo buses, and you can auto create subpath. Perfect. So you have more buses. Okay. So something to keep in mind in this window is when you can actually rename the buses. So I already created one that is called submaster. Okay. One is called main out print, submaster. And also one that is, but actually I want to remove this and I want to call this, I want to start renaming things. So let's start organizing. Let's start calling this sub violin 1. Okay, sub violin 1. And our second bus, we're going to call this sub violin 2. Okay, and then we're going to create another one that is called sub viola. Another one is going to call sub cello. Okay, and let's also call this MIDI. Let's do the same thing. MIDI violin 1. MIDI violin 1. Okay. And then live violin 1. We're going to be organizing them by MIDI and live. And then I want you to type MIDI violin 2, live violin 2. Okay. And then let's go to bus 2526. We're going to call this live viola, and then MIDI cello and live cello. Okay, and for our effects, you can, normally what I do is I create just as a starting point 3 different reverbs. So reverb room, and then reverb plate and reverb hall, just to start there. Perfect. So what we did basically was renaming all our buses. Okay. And you will see why it's important to do it right now. And just click OK. As you can see, there's a lot of tracks. And if I click actually over here, it looks like a wow. You need to scroll a lot. So it's very challenging. So I want to show you a quick shortcut for zooming. So first you have to make sure to have this keyboard shortcut focus over here in the, you see in the right corner over here, the AZ. You have to enable that one, the keyboard focus. And then I want you to select Control Option up arrow to make your vertical zooming wider and down arrow to make it smaller. So this is a great way of doing it quickly instead of going right here and clicking option and moving all this stuff. So, okay, Control Option up and Control Option down, depending on vertical zooming. If you want to do horizontal zooming, you can do T, you can press T or R. T for zooming in, R for zooming out. Okay, two important keyboard shortcuts. But you can see there's a lot of tracks over there. How do we organize them? Okay, first of all, let's create something that is very important. And I want to show you what is this. And I want to select Shift Command N, like the way you normally bring new tracks. Shift Command N. And as you can see over here in this window, you have the create, you have the amount of tracks you want, the type, you want mono stereo, the type of audio track, samples or ticks, and the name, okay? But you can do this with shortcuts as well. If you click Command left arrow or right arrow, you can make your track from mono to stereo. If you also hold Command and up arrow, you can change the type of track that you have, from routing folders to basic folders, audio track, aux input, master fader, VCA master, MIDI track, instrument track, whatever you want. Okay, so I think this is a great opportunity to talk about folders. We have routing folders and we have basic folders. I'm going to show you both right now. I recommend you using routing folders because they have the same capabilities of our aux tracks, plus they're better. So I honestly love routing folders. I think this is the present and the future. I don't need any more aux tracks for my tracks, for organizing my tracks. I use the aux tracks for effects. So let me tell you something. If you click, for example, let's do routing folders. Let's include 12 routing folders, okay? And if you select Shift Command down arrow, you can add more. You have more options. Shift up arrow or down arrow, okay? I'm holding Shift Command. Okay, so let's do, for the next layer, we wanna add 4 stereo aux inputs, okay? We're selecting 4, and now Shift Command down arrow, and I wanna select stereo. I want to do master fader, 1 master fader. Lastly, just for demonstration purposes, I want to show you the difference from the basic folders. Okay, so I'm going to select 1 basic folder just to show the difference. Let's create them. Wow, it's going to be like, what is happening? It's a lot of stuff. Okay, again, the shortcut to zoom vertically is Control Option down arrow to make it to shrink everything, to organize everything. Even though it's small, it's still confusing, still not ideal. So I'm going to drag all these tracks until the end of the whole thing for now. Okay, I'm going to leave my audio track on the top and I'm going to drag them in there. And I think the best way to organize folders is probably in the mix window. So I'm going to select Command plus, and I'm now in the mix window. So the question is, how do I organize all these tracks? How can I view these better? So if you click Command Option M, everything is going to get a little bit smaller. Okay, it's just going to be a little bit better for you to move. So I want to show you quickly the difference from basic folders and routing folders. The basic folder, as you can see, it doesn't have any inserts, no sends, nothing in inputs and outputs, no panning. It has only solos and mutes, basically. And the way it works is just that it's just organized. So the way you place something inside the folder, you drag any track and put it on top of the fader, and you can see that yellow box, and that's how basically it's telling you that it's going inside. The difference from routing folders is that we have an inserts, we have sends, we have inputs and outputs, we have automation, we have panning, we have solo mutes. It's basically the same thing as an aux track. Let me compare it for you. Like, I'm going to compare right now the aux track. We have an aux track over here next to each other, aux track and folder routing, and the routing folder and aux track, they look exactly the same. The thing is that aux track, they can work as folders. So I definitely recommend you working with the folders, routing folders. So let's delete this basic folder. We don't need it. And I want you to start organizing. So now we're going to start labeling things properly, routing things. But something else I wanted to mention, everything, as you can see, is color coded. It's not perfectly right now, still confusing. So we're going to color code things again. and better. Okay, so let's go back to our mix window. And as you can see, our folder 1, we're going to call this our sub. This is going to be our sub violin 1. Just color this, bright, let's say yellow. Let's do this yellow. Sub, we're going to label it violin 1. Okay, if you click command down arrow, you can be able to actually label the tracks that are after that one or before. So command down arrow. Okay, so I'm going to label now folder number 2, and I'm going to call this sub violin 2. Command down arrow, I'm going to call this sub viola. Command down arrow, sub cello. Okay, and also command down arrow, I want to actually label our MIDI and live instruments. So I'm going to create MIDI. I'm going to label this MIDI violin 1. Command down arrow, live violin 1. Command down arrow, MIDI violin 2. Command down arrow, live violin 2. So you get my point. I want to do the same thing. MIDI viola. Command down arrow, live viola. Command down arrow, MIDI cello, and command down arrow, live cello. Okay, and then command down arrow, and now we have our aux tracks. So I'm going to call this sub master. So basically everything's going to be routed to this track, this aux track, which is very important. And then I'm going to go command down arrow, and I'm going to call this reverb room. Command down arrow, reverb plate. Command down arrow, reverb hall. Okay, and then we have our master. Done. Perfect. So now things are named properly, but still we're getting there. So the way I love to organize things is I love to have my effects on the right, like after my master fader. So I'm going to drag them after my master fader. Okay, that looks a little bit better. My submaster track, I love to color code it red, so I know it's important, as it's similar to my master fader. And my master track, let me go, perfect. And now let me go select the main out. Okay, so I love to color them red, just so I know they are very important. Submaster and master, they're red. And now let's color code our subs. So we have sub violin 2. Violin 2 for me is a little bit greenish. And then let's do viola. Let's do viola to do a viola. And then let's do cello, and for me cello is a little bit blue. Let's do it blue. Okay. Now we have our subs there. So now let's drag our other folders. So we have our MIDI violin 1 and live violin 2 routing folders that we can actually insert inside our main sub violin 1 routing folder as well. So you just drag them on top of the track, and you will see that little box, yellow box. Drag them there, and boom, done. You will see that they are there. The keyboard shortcut to open and close your folders is simple. It's Shift F. You click Shift F, you're going to open and close your folder. Okay, Shift F. Okay, so that now is open. Now I'm going to do the same thing with violin 2. I'm going to drag them to sub violin 2, sub, and then MIDI viola, live viola. I'm going to do the same thing. And then MIDI cello, live cello, and I'm going to do the same thing. Perfect. So now I have a little bit of more clarity with the things that I'm doing. Okay, so I can select the track, the writing folder, Shift F to close, and you can see now it's getting better. It's cleaner. They're getting closer. So viola, Shift F, and now it's getting closer. So now we have made 4 main folders, but we still have our tracks basically on the same direction. So now we have to place them inside these folders. But before going there, I want to route properly actually our subs. So the way to do this is simple. So let's select sub violin 1, and let's go to input, and we're going to call this buzz. And remember, we already labeled this. That's why it's so important to do it before. So we go to buzz, and then we have sub violin 1. In the worst scenario, if you ended up not labeling properly or whatever, you just go right click, you click right click, and just click rename, and you can rename it there. That's another way of doing it. Okay, so my input is sub violin 1. My output, I want this to go to my sub master. Okay, my sub master is going to be everything, basically, to be our foundation. So in my input, in my sub master, I label this sub master. I select sub master in my sub master aux input, and that's it. We have that ready. And then let's do the same thing with now the MIDI violin 1. So MIDI violin 1, I go to buzz, MIDI violin 1. You see it? Perfect. In my input, in my output, I want this to go to actually my sub violin 1, to my sub. So do you understand? My input for this MIDI violin 1 is a bus called MIDI violin 1 that I labeled, and my output is going to my sub violin 1. My sub violin 1 is going to my sub master. My sub master is going to my main out. You understand? That's the routing. This is so important. Routing things properly is so fundamental. Now let's go with live violin. So go to bus, live violin 1, perfect, and then go to bus, and then go to to sub violin 1. Now let's do the same thing. Let's close this. We're done with sub violin 1. Let's go to sub violin 2. We're going to do exactly the same thing. Input, we're going to call this sub violin 2, and my output is going to my sub master. Something to keep in mind about aux inputs and aux tracks, we have to make them solo safe. Okay, so command, I'm going to move here a little bit, and I'm going to go to my sub master and click command S, or click in the S button to make it solo safe, and the same with the reverbs. Command S, command click in the S, and perfect. That's what we have to do. Okay, now with my MIDI violin 2, we're going to do the same thing. Bus, MIDI violin 2, my output is going to be sub violin 2. My live violin 2 is going to go to my bus, live violin 2, and my input is going to be sub violin 2. My output, sorry. My input is live violin 2, and my output is sub violin 2. Okay? Once you do it, it's so simple. Shift F, okay? I'm closing that folder. Now let's open sub viola folder. So my input is going to be sub viola, and my output is going to be sub master. Okay. My input for my MIDI viola is going to be MIDI viola. It's over here. My output is going to be sub viola. Now in my live viola, my input is going to be live viola, and my output is going to be sub viola. Okay, now we're done with the sub viola. Let's close Shift F. Now let's go to input bus sub cello as my input for my sub. My output is going to be bus sub master. Okay, and then for my input is going to be in my MIDI is going to be bus. It's going to be MIDI cello, and my output is going to be bus sub cello. Okay, and the same thing with live cello here. Input bus live cello, and output is bus sub cello. And let me tell you something. I already created a template for you that you are going to be able to find in OL. But anyways, it's good that you know how to do it. That's why I'm doing this video, okay, for you, just for you. Okay, so Shift F just to close that. So we have at least this part of the whole process routed properly. Now let's go back to our edit window, and as I mentioned, Control Option to make vertical zooms, and as you can see, nothing is yet. It looks like nothing is routed properly. Nothing is happening here, so we can hear anything. But also, just for now, I'm going to select all of them, all the audio tracks from the mix onto the top, and I'm going to randomly just Shift Option. I'm just to send them to my main out, just randomly right now. Just for you to get a sense of the sound. But let me tell you something. We recorded everything in playlist. So now I want to go in the world of playlist. What is a playlist? So playlist, you can find them in multiple ways. So if you click next to this triangle next to the title, you can see Bloom 1, 2, 3, 7, and that one is basically those are my playlists. You can also go where it says waveform and go to playlist. Okay, but this is a shortcut. You can also select Control Command left arrow, and immediately you're going to see all your playlists. Okay, there's another way. And you want to close that, Control Command right arrow. I would love if you can create a backup of all these playlists. Okay, all these takes, whatever you prefer. As you can see, I exported from Logic my MIDI violin and my violin 2, my violin 3, all my MIDIs living in this area. So I'm selecting the live tracks, selecting all of them, and then I'm clicking, I'm holding Shift Option Control backslash, and automatically disappear. And you say like, whoa, what happened? Why did they disappear? No, actually they didn't disappear. They are now living in a new playlist. So how do you toggle between playlists and the waveform and all of that? Remember that shortcut, Control Command left arrow. So for example, now with the room, we have the 4 takes here. Okay, we have 4 takes. But the thing is like, okay, we have 4 takes. Oh my goodness, but what if like I want to layer all of them so we can create a string orchestra? How do I do that? Okay, the way I recommend you doing it is basically by duplicating things. So duplicating playlists and all that stuff. So I want you to do something very important for now. But before we go there, so what I recommend you doing is, as you can see, we have 2 room mics. So that means that this is my first layer on my voice, and this is my first voice, and this is my DVC. So basically, we need to duplicate all of that stuff 4 times each of those groups, So you can, duplicate them, right-click, select them all, and click duplicate. And we already have 1, so you can click 3 times. You can do 3. But we can do that right now, or we can start organizing them properly in our folders, which I think makes more sense right now. And then we can duplicate after. So Command plus to go to our mix window. And let me tell you, we have already our routed folders here. Let's open them, Shift F. And what I want to do is now drag the right tracks in the right folder. Actually, if you want, create a new routing folder, Shift Command N, and you can select stereo routing folder. Let's do 3 new routing folders. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think it's important to have also a routing folder for our room mics and our reverbs. So I'm going to call this sub rooms. And then I'm going to call the next one room mics, the next folder, command down arrow. The other one I'm going to call it verb, printed reverb. Okay, I have to label this properly again. So as you can see, I didn't create a bus for this. So don't worry, I can select 1. I can rename it. I call it this sub room. And the output of this is going to be my sub master. My input of room mics, I can create a new bus. I can select a new bus, 3738, right click, renames, and then room mics. And then the output of this is going to my sub room. And this is optional. You can keep the printer reverb inside the sub rooms, or you can keep it, you can place the printer reverb in the reverb section. But I think in this case, I'm treating it more as an audio track. So I'm going to click buzz and 3940. This is optional. You can do it in many, many different ways, but I'm going to keep it there. So printed reverb, and then my output of this is going to be sub room. Okay, perfect. So we have new tracks. Let me just color code this properly. Sub room a little bit darker. Perfect. So now I have my rooms there. So let's bring our 2 other folders inside my sub room. Okay, so now we have them there. Perfect. We have them. Now let's go to our violin 1 folder, and let's start dragging things properly. So we have violin 1 live. There's in green. That's a good thing. Violin 1 live. Let's drag them there. Okay, let's drag them there. They are there, living there. Perfect. And we have also MIDI violin here. So let's go to the top. Let's have MIDI violin 1. Okay, perfect. Let's drag them into MIDI violin folder, routing folder. Okay, they're looking good. I think that's done. Now let's close this, Shift F. It's getting better. Now let's bring our sub violin to, let's bring all our stuff here. So let's bring all of that all the way up. So let's go up. Let's go before that, and great. So now let's drag our sub violin to MIDI. So we have over here MIDI, and then our live performances. We have sub violin is in brown. And something actually I forgot to mention is that we actually have 2 layers. Okay, so I think I'm missing my violin ones over here. They're green. It's a good thing of having them color coded properly. So I'm going to drag them actually to my live violins. Okay, perfect. So now we have our live violins, first layer, and our second layer DVC. Then I want to show you how to duplicate all that stuff. I know it sounds complex, but we're basically cleaning things around here. Okay, now let's drag our violin 2 tracks. Let me drag them here. This is my folder. I'm dragging them there. Perfect. Now we should have four tracks there. And perfect. That's looking good. Now, sub viola or MIDI viola. Let's go here. Let's select all of them. There are 4 tracks. MIDI viola, MIDI viola. Let's go all the way, MIDI viola. And we place them inside. And then we do live viola. Okay, live viola. And drag them inside. We have to take from the first layer and then live viola from our second layer. And then sub cello, let's do the same thing. You know, we're closer here for the cello. Let's do it quickly here. Sub cello here. and then you can drag it inside the live cello. And basically, you have to do the same thing with the other cello. Okay, the second layer is down here. I tried to keep the up layer first and the second one layer in the bottom. Okay, and then we're just organizing files. And now let's do our MIDI cello. That I think is our last MIDI. Now things are getting cleaner. Finally. Okay, so let's go to our live MIDI cello here. Perfect. So they're getting better. And so far, we don't need any more to have my violin open. So Shift F, let's close this. Look how beautiful it's now looking. So Shift F now again, violin is closing. We're closing all these tracks. And then cello, yeah, we don't need the perfect. You see, from all those tracks, now we can see our life here. Like it's finally we have perspective. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed. It's impossible to work in the other way. Okay, so let me go to my room mics. And I'm dragging it to my room mics and actually have my conductor track. You can also drag it there in your room mics as well. And your verb, you can drag it in your printed verb. And you should have as well more copies. So room, bloom online, and conductor. I'm dragging that in my room mics folder and my verbs. And my verb is going here. And lastly, we have these mixes. We have 2 mixes that we did for you. They were just a reference. So I will hide them. I don't need them. I want to do my own mix. That's why we're doing all this stuff. We're doing our own mix. Yes, perfect. So look how beautiful it looks. Wow. That's it. All that mess now is clean. It's better. I like it more. It's organized. Do I need my reference track? I don't think so. Do I need my click track? I don't think so. So you can just hide and make inactive. You don't need it for now. I think you're fine. So it's even looking even better, you know. And if you want to even make this smaller, of course, you can click Option Command M and you can even make it even smaller. So Option Command M, but I think this is perfect. This looks amazing. I'm loving this. And now we go to our edit window. Wow, everything also looks small. So remember, Option Control up arrow to make this bigger. And you will see all these basically like blocks of stuff there. And you're like, oh, wow. So you can use the same shortcut to open the folders. So what I want to do now is to duplicate my playlist so we can have the right amount of takes. So Shift F. Okay. Now we have our MIDI there and we have our violin one here. I want to duplicate all this stuff. And the reason why is because we have plenty of playlists going on in there, in every single one of them. So Control Command, left arrow. Oh, wow. Do you see? So what I did is I'm selecting Control Command, left arrow. So I open my playlist. And as you can see, my violin ones have 4 takes in the Sheps, in the condenser mic, in my Royers, and also in my layer 2, we have 3 takes each. But we don't need to keep something to keep in mind for our mixing. We don't need to mix our condenser mics with our ribbon mics. We have to choose actually which one sounds better. But for now, we're just doing this just for organizational purposes, just to keep things in mind. Just before we start deciding that, we have to organize things properly. So we're going to our violin. We have our violin there. So now let's duplicate all these playlists so we can actually be able to properly remember. We have 3 here and 4 here. So I want you to remember that. So I want to go in the waveform again, and okay. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate, for example, these 2. So I want to duplicate them 4 times. Duplicate them 4 times, and I'm including active playlists, alternative playlists, everything. I'm including everything. So I'm duplicating 4. Wow, now it's looking like woof. Looking a little bit more. It's looking a little bit crazier. So let me color this a little bit different so they are distinctive. Layer 1, layer 2. So these are my layers basically in their living. So what I want to do now, just for layer 1, as I mentioned, Control Command, left arrow, just to open my playlist. And I want to start selecting. Wow. Woo. So now let me show you different shortcuts of a playlist, like playlist shortcuts that I think are going to be very beneficial for you. So for example, if you want to move the editor cursor up and down through playlist lanes, you have just to select Control, you can see my cursor, Control P to go up, and Control semicolon to go down. Do you see? Perfect. That's another way of doing it. If, for example, if your cursor is in this playlist, if you select Shift S, it's going to solo it for you. So you're going to be able to hear it. Okay, so you're going to be able to hear it. Shift S. Okay, and remember, Control P to go up, Control semicolon to go down. Another way of doing it also, if you wanna, for example, copy a selection to the main playlist, for example, that you selected this, and you say, I want this, I love this. So you're cutting it. How do you bring it up to a main playlist? You have to do it. You can do it in many ways. One way is to do Option Control V and bring it up. Okay, you can see, bring it up. Otherwise, you can select the whole thing and select this little button that is here. Do you see it? Yes. Up. Okay, and that's another way of doing it. For now, I'm not cutting anything or selecting. I'm bringing all of them up. So I can just go Control Option V to bring it up. Okay, so that's, let me just zoom out a little bit because it's kind of like, I want to do it for every single take. So I already selected take 1 from my violin Schweppes 1. I want to do the same thing for my Royers, take 1, bring it up. And then I want to do from my Schweppes, I want to select take 2. I know it's very small. Let me do a little bit bigger. Okay, I want to do take 2 now. As you can see, I already selected these, so I don't need them. I can bring them down. Control Command right arrows to be a waveform. So that was my take 1. Now I want to do it from my other group. So I'm going to select take 2, and you can do Control Option B to bring it up. My second group, selecting it, or you can click this button, my second group, perfect. So let's bring this down. Let's close this and let's continue. So now I'm going to bring take 3 up, take 3 up, perfect. Great, Control Command right arrow. I want to do it just for violin 1, so you get that idea, but you have to do it for every violin 2, viola, cellos, and everything. Okay, so you have to select every single take. Okay, so I already selected. Let me do take 3. Perfect. So I already did all this job. I already organized all these tracks. And let me tell you what I exactly did. Exactly what I did was, as you can see, let me go in my mix window. You have in sub violin 1 over here, as you can see, I have a folder, Shift F to open or close. I have inside 2 other folders. I have the MIDI violin 1, as we talked before, and live violin 1. Perfect. So I organize all the files. And let me tell you something very important. Routing, very important element in routing. Let me tell you, so once I have all my tracks, all my violins, I duplicated the playlist. Now I selected the place, take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4. So we have basically in groups, we have this is take 1, this is take 2, a violin once, and then this is take 3, and this is take 4. And then this is take 1. I'm actually selecting 2 different tracks because we have one Shep. So we recorded with 2 microphones. We recorded with a condenser microphone and with a reverb microphone. So I have 1 take, second take, and then my third take of my DVC. So I muted what I thought it was, just to play a little bit. So I selected the Sheps and then the Royers in another take and stuff like that, just to make variations. It's a test. You can do things differently. Absolutely, yes. And let me tell you that routing, very important routing element. Once you are in this moment where you have your tracks inside the folders, of course, we already, and let me give you a quick summary. This is my main sub for violin 1. So my input is sub violin 1, and I went to bus and I label it sub violin 1. And this is going to my output that is going to my sub master. Okay. That's what I'm doing. And inside that folder, I have a MIDI violin 1 folder, routing folder. And then in my input, I selected MIDI 1, violin 1. And my output, I selected sub violin 1. So in other words, my output is going to my input of sub violin 1, and my sub violin 1 is going to my sub master. So let me tell you something. Now we were going from top to bottom. So now with our main tracks, so what I'm doing, and very important that you do this, so none of this is going to work in the routing world. So it's very important that you do this, otherwise it's not going to work. So you select the tracks, in this case is my MIDI, Shift Option, and I go to my outputs and I select the bus MIDI, as you can see, MIDI violin 1. Okay, I select MIDI violin 1, and then that's it. And I don't need an input. So basically, my MIDI violin 1 is going to my MIDI tracks are going out to MIDI violin 1. MIDI violin 1 is going to my sub violin 1. My sub violin 1 is going to my sub master. That's the routing that we're doing. Also, with live violin, the same thing. You select all the tracks, shift option, and the output you go to bus live violin 1. So live violin 1, meaning all my violins ones go to live violin 1 input, and then this one go to sub violin 1 output, my routing folder, and then this sub violin 1 input go to my sub master. But it's super simple. Once you understand that the dynamic of routing is just magical, you will be surprised about the magic of all this routing process. So this is how it should look. Wow, it looks beautiful. I know for now is basically I'm expanding all these tracks, but basically while I'm, this I have my folder of sub violin 1, my MIDI violin 1, my live violin 1, sub violin 2. I have my MIDI violin 2, my live violin 2, and then I have my sub viola. I have my MIDI viola, live viola. As you can see, I color coded differently. The one that is darker color, as you can see in the top, is the one that represents, okay, the lower DVC. Also, we have the sub cellos, MIDI cello, live cello. Okay, so I did all the routing. Everything is looking really good. I have a room mics, so I routed all my tracks to my bus room mics. I don't need an input, so what I do is like shift option and no input. I don't need any input. The same thing of the printer reverb. I'm treating this printer reverb as another track, and I'm blending it with the reverb that I'm proposing with my plugins. Okay, so I'm blending the reverb that I printed from the studio with the ones from the plugins. So for the premix and editing assignment, this is exactly what I want from you. I want to see a routing folder that is hosting the two folders, the MIDI and the live, and I want all the routing to go properly. Correct. You can select, you can mute one of the microphones that I gave you, and also you can start color coding everything so it can look very organized. The beauty of this is that you can just do your main folder, Shift F, and you can just start hiding things. Now my sub cello, I'm doing Shift F, sub viola. I'm basically hiding all this stuff, and look how beautiful now. Just little tracks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks. Can you believe it? Can you believe these 5 folders holding all the stuff? So it looks like this, and this is beautiful because one of the benefits of having a routing folder is that I can actually, if you click over here, you open up the automation lane. And I mentioned this before, but I can do a freehand over here, and I can draw stuff. And I can draw automation, and it's going to apply to all, in this case, my sub violin ones, which is fantastic. So if I even open Shift F, I have opened the folders, I can do the same thing with the other folders. Okay, I can open that automation lane, and I can do the same thing of the drawing automation. If you draw it by freehand, or if you have a fader, if you can record, you can latch. You can do so many things, but this is the beauty of having these folders. Okay, so this is something I'm expecting from you, something that is color coded perfectly, labeled beautifully, and it looks professional. Okay, so let me give you a couple of shortcuts they're going to be very fundamental for you. So for example, I'm going to select right now my violin 1. I have my track here. This is my take 1 of my violin. Let's talk about playlist. Okay, so you have to select Control Command left arrow to see your playlist window, as you can see. Other option is that you can access, if you are in the waveform, for example, you can go and select playlist. That's another way of accessing your playlist. And a third way of accessing your playlist is by going to this little triangle and selecting your playlist from here. Okay, I recommend you, the shortcut is always great to learn a shortcut. So Control Command left arrow. Now you have your playlist. Okay, so that's one shortcut. And also, if you want to move the edit cursor up and down through playlist lanes, it's very simple. You just have to click and select Control P to go up. As you can see my cursor, you see my cursor going up? Now it's going down, up and down. So for the going down, you select the semicolon. Exactly the button that is under the P. So P as Peter, up, then the semicolon, down. Okay, that's another shortcut. Third shortcut, I wanna, for example, wanna copy the selection to the main playlist. So for example, let's say I like this particular take over here. I'm selecting the playlist right now, and you can cut it. I'm cutting it there. How do you bring this to the main playlist? So very simple. Select it and you click Control Option V as in Victor, and woo, now it's showing up there. So just to give you another example, let me select different color. Imagine that I like this, and then I select hold Control Option V as in Victor, and it goes the selection to the main playlist. Okay, so that's our third shortcut. And let me just undo all this stuff. And now let me give you another one. Let's create a new playlist from scratch. So how do you create a new playlist? So you select this one and click Control Backslash. Backslash is the button above the return key. Boop, that's it. Now you can see is here in the bottom. Okay, that's another shortcut. And what happens, for example, if you want to create a new playlist for each track in the session? Okay, we did it at the beginning. So very simple. You hold Control Option, okay, and Backslash. Now, oops, everything disappeared. What happened? Whoa. You can see now these are open because this is my playlist is open right now. The other ones, I'm in the waveform, so you don't see anything. But this is how you do it. Command Z to undo that. Now, another one. What if I want to duplicate the main playlist? Perfect. So to duplicate the main playlist, you have to click Command. Okay. So this is my main playlist. So Command, Control, Backslash. Boop. Awesome. As you can see, my main playlist is still in place, but I already created a duplicate in the bottom. Do you see? How to duplicate the main playlist for each track in the session? Okay. So you click Command, Option, Control, Backslash. Perfect. Now every playlist here, every track now has a new playlist. Okay. Lastly, I want to show you how to solo the playlist lane containing the edit cursor. So if you want to, so for example, as I mentioned, Control P is to go up, Control semicolon is to go down. What if you want to solo some of this playlist? Very simple. You click Shift S and automatically it's going to solo that playlist. One last element that is important to include is the grouping. Let me show you how to group tracks. So if you go to your mix window, as you can see, I have my sub-violin one, I have my MIDI violin folder, routing folder, and my MIDI track. So let's start with the MIDI track. So the way you do it is just select Shift, select the tracks that you want to group, and then click Command G, and you're going to have that create group window. So the first thing you have to do is to name your group. So MIDI violin 1. So you have that. And let me tell you, you have the ID option here. You just keep it like the way it is, the BCA. For now, I'm going to click none. And then in the type, I'm going to select mix and edit and follow globals. So if you go to globals over here, I'm selecting volume, mute, and solos and automation. This is basically what the group is going to follow. Once you selected them, you already have them here in the group. You have the tracks currently in the group. If you want to remove them, you can just select the track and hit remove. Or if you want to add another track, for example, you can just select another track from the left column and then click add. Okay, super simple. You click OK. Then once you open, you can see the group over here and you can see MIDI violin 1. So what is the benefit of having a group? So for example, you want to move the faders. Do you see they are all moving together? So it's faster, way faster doing it this way. So what if you temporarily want to isolate the channel strip from the group? You know, what if you just want to move one fader from the group? Okay, you hit Control and just move the fader, and the fader is going to move automatically alone. Okay, you can just move it, just hit Control, click Control, and move the fader, and going to isolate from the group. Okay, but that's the benefit of having from the group. Let me do it quickly for the violins, the live violins. So I'm selecting all of them, Command G. I'm going to call it live violin 1. I want to follow the same parameters, follow globals, mix edits. In globals, I'm selecting volume, mute, solos, and automation. Okay, and now I can move all of them. And you will see here is the purple. You can see the purple color there. It's the group. The group is active. Okay. For example, you want to suspend all the groups. They're very simple. You select all of them and you hit Command Shift G, and they all suspend. Okay, that's another way of doing it. Command Shift G, and they're back. So one last thing I want to mention about the groups is that let me create a new group again from the same MIDI. So Command G, and I'm calling this again MIDI violin 1. Okay, As you can see in the tracks, I have my MIDI violins. But what I'm going to do here, do you see this VCA? I already created a VCA here. So a VCA, let's say, is similar to a basic folder. You don't have inserts, you don't have sends, as you can see here. You don't have any panning, but you have an opportunity to have some automation and some, can solo mute and stuff like that. So I'm going to select VCA, and I'm selecting VCA MIDI violin 1. I already created one. And the way you create a VCA, the same Shift Command N, you can go into VCA master and you can label it there. Okay, I created already one. So my group is connected to this VCA. So the difference is that now I can move my faders instead of the other way, and they're not going to be affected, but actually they're going to be affected only by my VCA master. Do you see? There's another way of connecting your groups. Okay, so I show you at least 2 ways of working with groups. Perfect. So make sure to use groups also, so everything can be perfectly, basically organized and clear. And I already did it for all my channels. Okay, so this is what I'm expecting from you. Okay, having everything routed properly, labeled properly, color coded with groups, and also with the right playlist. This is the best way to get ready for your mixing session. That's it. We are done. We routed things properly. We label things properly. We name things correctly, and we group everything, and we select the right playlist. Everything is ready for our editing process. So we can now start cutting everything properly and aligning things perfectly, so we can be getting ready for our mixing session. Let's finish this with a tango. Thank you so much, C. Liang, for offering us this beautiful music. Goodbye, everyone. Ciao, ciao.